You got yourself a motion boom. You're loving it because it's Alan Ross's pound for pound world champion, and you're thinking nothing can be better than that. And then you wake up one morning and there's the headlines. Along came the Soundcore Motion Boom Plus. Well, it does look almost exactly like the Motion Boom, except it's bigger. It's bigger. Got tweeters. Wow, we thought it can't be bad, can it? It's the Motion Boom with tweeters. But it turned out it wasn't exactly the Motion Boom with tweeters. It was another speaker that looks like the Motion Boom. Has a very different nature. It's quite a bright nature. It's quite an edgy nature. First firmware, they added a 6 kilohertz peak.
You cannot be serious!
We couldn't believe it. Why would you do that? Only Soundcore know. And to this day, we don't know. But it was worse than that. People reporting battery issues, battery not lasting as long as it should, and even worse. You take it out for 5 minutes in a little bit of sun, and suddenly your passive radiators are sticking. It's all going terribly wrong, and we found it very tiring when we listened to it. And I made a firmware update to try and fix the very bright, harsh nature that a lot of people were complaining about. Not everybody, some people loved it.
Really?
Lot to like about it. Very light, reasonably priced, goes very loud. Not a bad package if you don't mind quite an edgy, bright, metallic sound.
Okay.
So they gave us a fix. The fix was just to reduce the mids and the highs relative to the bass. So the bass is smothering the rest of the track, so to speak, and you don't notice the highs so much. They could have just reduced the 6 kilohertz peak. And how do we know that? Well, because that's what's promised to happen in a firmware 3.6. You've woken up. You can't believe your eyes. You're on firmware 0.34. You may be on 0.35. I never went to 0.35. They said it was just a Bluetooth fix or upgrade. And I didn't have time anyway. And by the time I had time, what happened? Well, it was firmware 0.36, the big one, the one they said, this fixes the thing you've been complaining about, and the thing that actually Soundcore added in firmware, in the very first firmware, themselves. Not accidentally. They deliberately did it, and they left it. They left the 6 kilohertz peak and thought it was a better idea just to reduce the mids and the highs. But anyway, along comes the 3.36. And we're going to have to find out. Have we finally got a speaker that is a new pound for pound world champion? So they've actually, I know it's to fix the highs, because this is not a bugs fixed firmware update. This is optimized high frequency sound quality. Woohoo! So they're not even going to admit, well, we got that a bit wrong. We're fixing it. We're just optimize it. We're going to make it even better. Well, have they really made it even better? I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to record it before the firmware update, after the firmware update. About at 66% volume, and then at maximum volume to see if the ultimate headroom, because you can mess around with how linear the volume changes are, but you can't mess around when it comes to ultimate headroom maximum volume. Let's have a listen.
It's you, so dumb, now you do, you're welcome. Girl, I don't mean to be stealing, but I can't help myself. You know I got all these feelings and I can't check myself. Way treating you, that shit was madness. And now you're with me every day, that shit is magic. Whoa. And every time I can see you lying on Instagram, but every day I'll be showing you, girl, just who I am. Now I got a picture of the sad boy, cause he be crying over what he could've had, boy. Girl, you know he's better now. If he's mad, don't matter now. Now it's better to help him, cause of you, you're welcome. Now he's mad at you, so dumb, now you do, you're welcome.
Before and after, custom mode, all sliders at 0. And as you can see, at 6 kHz peak, gone. White is after, green is before, it's gone. Default mode, same volume, it's the same story. And by the way, default mode, custom mode at 0, they are the same. In fact, if I overlay them, you can see custom at 0 is signature mode, default mode. People still claim it sounds different. They are the same tuning. And then again, maximum volume, the old 6 kHz peak has gone. So firmware 0.36 does fix the 6 kHz issue, and it's not really messing with the sound anywhere else.
So that's brilliant. You can hear the difference, and you can certainly measure the difference. It's gone. The old 6 kHz peak that they added, they've now removed. So my EQ, which, let's just clarify once again, my EQ is not said to be the magic EQ. It's not the EQ to end all EQs, and if you don't use my EQ, you must be deaf. No, my EQ is just what works for me, starting with a flattish sound, and then kind of tailoring it to the nature of the actual speaker itself. In this case, it's something that is very, very punchy, so I've got to keep some punch to the bass. It's even with the two fixes we've had, reducing everything relative to bass, and then that 6 kHz peak coming down. It's now a reasonable listen, but that edgy nature is still there. The feeling is you're always one track away from, oh, what happened there? That ain't good. However, this is a reasonable speaker, a reasonable package. But so I'll have to say, got to take onto account what's my opinion, what's my personal taste, and the package itself. How will you be using it? Well, it's certainly got more of an outdoor speaker, I would say, than an indoor speaker. And you can't get away from the fact that it's very, very light. It's lighter than it looks. And for how loud it goes and how much oomph to the bass you've got, it's a really, really nice package. Now, so I'm going to have to re-EQ it. It's not magic EQ, it's just something that worked for me in the little bit of time I had to mess around with it. So my custom EQ now against default, which is their Soundcore signature tuning EQ, which is what they call it.
Everybody likes you, I'm not the first. Damn, it feels like we're in high school. You're such a flirt, always acting like you're holy. Shit, you're the worst. Bet I'd be your girlfriend if I went to church. And despite me, I keep hitting you back. And your narcissistic tendencies are making me mad. Cause if I'm such a prize, why would you make me drive? Get me drunk and not let me stay over. Now you're calling me up almost every single week. If I'm everything you want, why you say you maybe we'd be better as friends? It's so easy how you let go. Guess I'm not that fucking girl that you want. Only want me late at night when you're feeling all alone. We both know this isn't right. Stop trying to pretend. It's so easy how you let go. Guess I'm not that fucking special. Yeah, 'cause I'm not that fucking special. Guess I'm not that fucking special. My way to you. Put my blueprints down, laid it out stone by stone, picked up my fallen crown after working to the bone. Now I'm sitting pretty next to gentlemen, singing with the choir. I've got thicker skin, never been something I couldn't do once I found my way to you.
So the main thing that my custom tuning does is
It fills in the missing mids.
the white line, default mode, the green line, custom mode, and it also tames some of those still harsh highs. At lower volumes, because of the dynamic adjustment, you will end up with more bass. You've only got to bring those bass sliders down to adjust for that.
I think almost universally we can agree the default tuning, the default sound on this ain't good. It's weird. And I don't know. I mean, it obviously worked for them, or perhaps they don't actually listen to these speakers when it comes out the factory, and they just wait for the complaints, and then they use us as beta testers. They clearly use us as beta testers. This clearly was not ready for market when it went to market.
This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home.
They've had to do multiple fixes already. People are getting new speakers, getting extra speakers, just, I guess, to keep their reputation intact. They've been really, really good, you have to say. Soundcore support, if you actually bothered to complain. But if you just one of those that don't like to complain, but by the way, this is not quite right, then you're probably a little bit stuffed. It's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, I'm afraid. If you've got the time, an inclination to hassle, you'll get somewhere. But if you didn't, you're stuck with a speaker that may have no use on the beach because the passive radiators will stick. And as you make sure, we'll test it now to make sure before you get to the beach whether you've got one that sticks when it gets hot or not. I have to say, for me, my default tuning for me, in my listening scenarios, makes it a reasonable listen now. The nature probably of the tweeters is still that it's never going to be my go-to speaker. I hold my hand up.
Yes, sir. No, won't ever be my go-to speaker, sir. But
however, I have to say it's quite enjoyable. It's quite enjoyable. Still not a serious listen, but before, when it was really, really tiring and I didn't want to listen to it at all, quite harsh on the ears. Oh, that's now much better. So it does offer good volume, good bass punch, not deep bass, but bass punch, in a light package, not overly big, just about right, I guess. This is never going to let you delve into the nuances of tracks. I know that's a line I always say, but that's, to me, the difference between a serious listen and a fun listen. How do you do your listening? If you're just dancing around and you're bopping about and you just want a beat, that delivers. But this is not one of those speakers where it's detailed enough and there's enough separation and it's just that level of enjoyment where you want to listen to more and more tracks and you just want to hear it. Is there something I've not heard on my previous speakers? The way this is giving me a soundstage, or just the track itself, the way the signature or the character is being delivered. So that's the firmware update. That was a welcome fix with custom EQ, and it's all about custom EQ, isn't it? When you go into the app with Soundcore, makes it a reasonable old listen, but we've got these other options. We'll get to the other options probably in the next video, because you were also saying to me, "Ow," and I said, "What?" And you said, you've now got custom EQ on the Blast, you've now got custom EQ on the Boom Plus, can we hear them together in EQ mode? Just remember, I don't claim them to be magic EQs. I don't claim there is one way to listen to a speaker. Your room, your scenario, your ears, your taste, your genres that you listen to adjust to taste. I will also add in my next video the W King D10, which was a bit of a surprise package. You're actually asking me to compare it to speakers like the Boom Plus and, of course, the Tribbett Stormbox Blast, which I think looks like it's completely sold out. It's gone down a storm. Who would have thought of the Stormbox? But you're asking against the W King on paper. It's a bit of a mismatch, but we'll get to that. So don't forget to check back. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes, I actually made a video where I've said it off the top of my head. Like and subscribe. I don't think it makes any difference, but however, everyone does it. I did it once before. It didn't make any difference. I'm going to try again. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hope to see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife. Got my logic right, cause I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.